any questions or conversations or comments? Go on, Mark.
Yeah, I do some work with an organization now quite regularly, and I'm on Twitter quite a bit for work. And when I started working for them, I suddenly realized I sort of had to be an ambassador for them as well.
Yeah.
And because of the profile, and all of a sudden I was watching what I was saying online. Where was I going with this? Just about the separation of state and church, but also this thing of culture wars. And I started thinking about, is an issue that I think, you've got to get on and give your opinion about. Is it a culture war issue, or is it something else? And just by avoiding all these issues that are simply culture wars has helped me to only get involved in things which count. And another thing which I've thought about in the last sort of year or so is if I am ever questioned as to, what's it all about? What's the good news of the gospel? And you've got to give an answer right there and then. I decided that I would always start my answer with Jesus was in the business of religion, because he wasn't about political reform or social reform, although those things naturally follow out of Christianity. That wasn't his primary objective. And by going in and bringing relief in people's religion and freedom in religion, obviously those things follow. And so any of my conversations about Christianity will start with that. And I wonder whether this thing with the coin was more to do with, it was a culture war issue for him or for them. Yeah. And he might just not have seen any value in getting sucked into that whirlpool.
Yeah, I think there's something, because it was clearly, it's clearly presented. All three Gospels present it as something that was put together to trip him up. That's why I wanted to draw out the fact that the Herodians would be pro the tax. The Pharisees, we know, because they've got their writings, are against the tax. And trying to put Jesus in a place where he said, if he aligns with the Pharisees, which they expect, don't pay it, we can make an issue that to bring him to Pilate, but equally we will upset some of the other folks. So I think that there's clearly it's so he has to respond, but in his response he gives us an answer that is more than simply for the moment, which hence they were impressed with it. And as I say, for me, in that answer, it highlights the grace that is there in the new covenant, if you like, which is perhaps what you're talking about when you're saying about the changing their religious understanding. That actually there is a kind of we know from Genesis 1, where man is a community in the image of God, he created them. So none of us exist purely on our own. So we have to engage with community. And actually, the way that then Genesis 3 puts it, sin is crouching at your door. Sin may not be something that you are born intrinsically with, as original sin as that doctrine. Not all Christians are of that view, but all of us understand that every single one of us has now been born into a culture where sin is in the environment, and therefore we have to engage with the world that is in a broken way. And even Jesus is born into a world like that, So actually, to understand that there is a kind of a grace in our dealings with a broken world, it's not down to us to get everything right, because it's pretty much impossible to. So we have to live under that kind of layer of grace within that, and to be honest about that rather than hypocritical, pretending that somehow because it suits our means right now, I'm going to claim I'm not going to do that. Now, is just, so then we become hypocrites, because we say, oh, I wouldn't pay for that because I disagree with it. Well, that's fine. But the trouble is there's always something down the line. The fact of the matter is often I've raised this with the fair trade issue, which is not to say that it's not a good idea to have debates about fair trade, but the concept of fair trade cotton is a total misnomer. Because the point at which they introduce the checks on whether your cotton is fair trade are far too late. There are every single piece of cotton that claims to be fair trade was probably picked by kids who were being exploited. I can't therefore wear a clothes for t-shirts, whether I buy them from Marks and Spencers or Primark, that hasn't in one sense been developed in a system where we could look at it and say that's abusive, that's corrupt, and so on. That doesn't mean to say we ignore those things, because he doesn't say you ignore those things that are wrong. And that's why I said there's always been these debates on the words. If the government insists that you do something, if it compels something wrong, Christians will regularly stand up and not do them. So it's never been a kind of a total carte blanche either way. But the debate that Jesus raises with these words have been really significant, and actually have resulted in lots of levels of a political freedom, not just the religious freedom, which is at the heart of where it all flows from. So that would be, yeah.
You also mentioned the issue of laws and where they do contradict Christian things. And I think especially you see in the States where it causes so much upset, where secular law is different to religious law.
Yeah.
And it causes a kind of a withdrawal where people, especially in the States, you can get Christian everything, Christian theme parks or whatever, and you can live in that bubble. And this constant upset that must bring to those people, that there are certain laws which are contradictory to what you believe. And so it will never be perfect. And there isn't, I mean, all it does really is results in animosity rather than opportunities to be gracious or to help alter things if there's an opportunity.
Yeah, and the use of the US is quite a good example, because I don't want to just knock the US for the sake of it, but because actually, the US in one sense has kind of legally instituted the separation of church and state in their constitution. They've taken this idea and put it in there. But the funny thing is, very often it's the Christian church who are separated, and church and state are separated, who will then complain that their taxes are being used for things they don't like, so we're not going to pay our taxes. So in one sense they can celebrate, isn't it great, we've got separation of church and state, church can't inflict the things on us that we don't like. But at the same time, I'm going to now do exactly the opposite here, which is I'll trade within that system, I'll make my money that way, but now I'm going to withhold it, I won't pay for it. And it's not a yes or no answer. The point is it's kind of a debate within context. But the words themselves have a certain level of genius to them, because it's the debate around it actually does regularly produce a kind of a freeing layer in both directions, I think.
Well, there was that Northern Irish politician a few weeks back, and she was being grilled over gay marriage or something like that. And she said, yeah, I believe it was a sin, but she said, I will do everything I can to fight for the rights of gay people.
Yeah.
And just an understanding that her religious belief is one thing and the secular is another. And I thought it was a very clever answer, very genuine and I think, and very gracious.
And you do find with a lot of Christian politicians who have made a big impact, you'll often find that, which is that they understand the sort of the dividing line, that my role is to stand and work for the benefit of people who are made in God's image, who is God's children. Not necessarily to be the endorsement or forcer of particular ways of being and living. And I think, again, I come back to a verse I like, when Paul says in Philemon that your compunction, that your goodness shouldn't be under compunction or compelled. That actually there's a kind of something in this, which is why it's a dialogue, why we try and debate it, why discuss it, we try and draw the lines, we'll make slightly different decisions on different days with different people in a different context. But we're looking to release good behavior, if I can say it like that, but for the right reasons, not for the wrong reasons. And this is perhaps another kind of issue where the issue of, if the government has decided that Christians who believe certain things should be executed, and they come and ask me if I know so and so is one of those people, I might, like Richard Wurmbrand, decide that right now is a time not to cooperate with them, not to do as they've told me, just because they've got the law on their side. So it's always it's a shifting discussion, but as I say, I think Jesus' answer, you can demonstrably show it's had a long social context, a long social history that has gone around these words. So, and normally we see them resolving for the positive. Any other thoughts or comments?
I just wanted to pick up on Jesus acknowledging that they were trying to trap him.
Yeah.
What was it in response to that you said that we have to acknowledge hypocrisy, otherwise we're party to it? Or was that something else?
No, that was I probably wasn't making it directly on that conversation. So Jesus, the word he uses, obviously, the word hypocrite has come to mean something. When Jesus uses it, it's a play actor. So he calls out the fact that this isn't really what it is you're asking the question for. But even given that, so that everybody understands, you're not really wanting to know the answer. Well, you do want to know the answer, but not to satisfy an intellectual inquiry, but so that you can leverage it for political reasons. And of course, so it's absolutely fine to call those things out in those ways. And actually, that's, in the modern world, we throw derogatory words like hypocrite around just as labels to stick on people. But actually, when you experience it, it's not at all unreasonable to point out to the person what are their motives.
I noticed Jesus did that with Judas as well, doesn't he? When he kisses him, he calls out the hypocrisy. I'm just aware that often I would ignore that, in my dealings with people, because sometimes that feels more gracious. But Jesus doesn't do that.
You're absolutely right. There are several occasions, aren't there? Like when he says to the rich young ruler, "Why do you call me good?" Or is it the note to the scribe? It's the scribe he says that to. So and I think it's not that we often look for all-time yes and all-time no answers, whereas I think what we see modeled in Jesus is there's a time to be silent, there's a time to speak out. And it's the wisdom that understands which is which sometimes. But yeah. Any other thoughts or questions? No, but it looked like the internet's playing up now, or so not playing up, is now behaving itself after the disaster in the middle. Good. Well, we'll leave it then for this week. Hopefully, well, I always like to think that folks who come on these or watch these will look to try and reproduce these in other discussions elsewhere. And in particular, this is a really good one to kind of get discussion going, I think, as to, which I wouldn't try and do necessarily on this Zoom presentation, but, the issue of where do different individuals draw the line between what the state requires of them and what and how we have to respond. Because I think those aren't answers of which there is a simple universal answer. I think that's the reality. But actually, the words of Jesus, given the context of Jesus, have regularly generated that discussion. So what's the good and godly way to try and respond to some of those things?
Good question.
Yeah. So as I say, it's a good one if you've got small groups discussions. Yeah. Good. Well, thank you so much for making it, everyone, today.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kristen. A really nice topic.
Very interesting.
And as I say, when we edit all together, hopefully we can tidy up the breaks. Rescue something. Yeah. Thanks for sticking with me. Bless you then, guys. Okay.
Thanks, Kristen.
Okay, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.